also the dust environment. And Mercury's magnetic field is much weaker than our Earth, and the Mercury has no atmosphere. So in the extreme environment of the Mercury, the strong solar wind and strong solar radiation will easily interact with the Mercury's surface, and it affects the structure and dynamics of the Mercury's magnetosphere. So MEO is going to make the comprehensive measurement of the plasmas and resolve the still very explored Mercury's magnetosphere.
Okay, Gunther, which one is yours? Can we see yours?
Okay, so ESA's orbiter is this one, MPO, and then ESA is also responsible for the transfer module, which brings us to Mercury, and also the sun shield to save MEO from the hot sun.
Okay. Sorry, I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
No, so you wanted to ask me what is inside?
No, I want to ask you what's the advantage of having two spacecraft.
Okay, I mean to have two spacecraft.
We'll get to the other question afterwards.
For the subject that Zeiser-san is mentioning, the magnetic field is a three-dimensional structure. It also depends on the solar wind. It changes, and so if you measure it from different angles, you can get much more information than just from a single angle. Okay. But also, the fact that we are basically looking at the same object from different times, also different instruments, is giving us a lot of additional information about the composition, the chemistry, about Einstein's theory of relativity, and so on.
Okay, good. Dr. Saito, last question, rather briefly, if you don't mind. Yeah? Why study the magnetic field?
Well, when the magnetic field of the Mercury was discovered about 40 years ago by Mariner 10 spacecraft, it was a great surprise. But the magnetic field of Mercury has not yet been fully understood. So making
going to help us.
Okay, making measurements, MEO will solve the mystery of the Mercury's magnetic field.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off because we're out of time. Gentlemen, many thanks. Back to Terry now for a first look at the launch vehicle.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. So let's get back to this launch vehicle still in the Guyanese night. Some numbers to define further this mission. So we'll look at this Ariane 5 and its passenger tonight. Ariane 5, this is a heavyweight version, the ECA. You will see some 55 meters high, like the five stages or 5 floors of Buddhist temple of Toji in Kyoto, the largest pagoda in Japan. It was built in 1644, therefore it's the equivalent of an Ariane 5 ECA. Liftoff mass is 780 tons. The initial thrust being provided by the solid rocket boosters flanking the Vulcain 2 engine. The fairing is 17 meters high, protecting the single passengers of tonight. This is BepiColombo, ESA JAXA, 2 probes within 1 satellite. The carriage capacity required for this 101st Ariane 5 is 4 tons 207, 4 tons 49 alone for the BepiColombo satellite. This is all, Joshua, for the time being. We will leave you with a new guest, and not the least, telling us about the ESA expertise in terms of scientific missions.
Right, joining us tonight, ESA's Director General Jan Werner.
Good evening.
Hi. Another big scientific mission tonight. Now, I've heard you say many times that science is the backbone of ESA.
Yes, science was the origin of ESA, and science is still the backbone. It is a special method how we are dealing with the science program. It is not top-down, which a Director General would love. It is bottom-up. That means the scientists are deciding what to do, and therefore science is really the backbone with new missions like the BepiColombo.
Mm-hmm. Now, with BepiColombo is part of a wider program of deep space probes. I'm thinking of the Jupiter-Ganymede mission, and there are others. Can you tell us BepiColombo's place in that program?
So if you look into our science program, we have a lot of scientific missions. Some are looking to planets, some are looking really to galaxies or other stars. So it's really part of this overarching program, which was called Cosmic Vision, and therefore we have a special director for the science mission. It's Günther Hasinger, whom you talked to earlier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now ESA is, of course, a very big international organization, but it's not every mission that we have such a wide international cooperation, and I'm thinking in particular of the Japanese. Can you tell us a bit about
So
that?
ESA always tries to have international missions. So, of course, each and every mission of ESA is international because we have 22 member states. And the science program is paid out of what we call the mandatory program, and therefore all member states have to pay for these science missions. But in addition, we are always trying to have others on board. This time we have, of course, JAXA as a very predominant partner, but also NASA, and the Russians are with us at BepiColombo.
Mm-hmm. The space is a very cooperative business now. Would you say that no organism or no state can go it alone? Is that fair to say?
That's not the question for me. What is really the beauty is that space is above all the earthly problems, the earthly boundaries and borders, and therefore, even if we could afford such a mission alone, we like to do it together with partners because this shows that we can bridge earthly crisis by space.
Mm-hmm. All right, think of you're speaking to the average person in the street now. Sum it up for us. What's the most important thing, or maybe there are two or three most important things that people should know about BepiColombo?
For me, BepiColombo, the fascination is the most important thing. Because if you explain all these magnetic experiments and all of this, it's clear to go there for 7 years, a man-made or woman-made, but depends on that, instrument. This is really the fascination, and that was what Günther was saying. Fascination leads to inspiration, and inspiration to motivation, and this is what we need for our society.
Okay, terrific. Jan Werner, thank you so much. He's going to go back to work. We are going back to Thierry, who's going to look at the mission highlights and tell you everything you need to know about the mission coming up.
Thank you, Joshua. In particular, all is going according to plan. I can tell you that we are 14 kilometers away from this launch pad, number 3, where the launch vehicle has been waiting since yesterday as it was rolled out from its last assembly building after being given the go-ahead, and it's waiting there. We will now go through the major highlights that will be pacing this mission. There are no launch windows tonight, and liftoff is scheduled some 20 minutes from now. BepiColombo arrived in Guyana on the 24th of April, and this is when the campaign started, and everything is now ready for liftoff tonight. A few key moments, as we said: liftoff in Universal Time, 1 hour, 45 minutes and 28 seconds, 22 hours and 45 minutes and 28 seconds Kourou time, 2 minutes, 21 later, separation of the solid rocket boosters at 3 minutes 09, separation of the fairing. The launch vehicle and satellites will be followed by 5 successive tracking stations, as you all know, all of which will be on its journey to the east. Everything starting from here in Kourou with the Galileo station at 8 minutes 43, jettisoning of the main cryogenic stage, and in the same breath, 4 seconds later, ignition of the upper cryogenic stage. After a mission that will be quite short, the separation velocity will be 10,155 meters per second, and altitude will be 49 kilometers, and at 26 minutes and 47 seconds, separation of the satellite BepiColombo en route to Mercury with a 7-year journey, and a fabulous one indeed. So we will meet again in December 2025 for the first data reported back from the 2 probes, one under the aegis of ESA and the other one JAXA. So this around Mercury. As we heard earlier, if there's one area where international cooperations are primordial, it is the space industry. You cannot go it alone in the space. Joshua, as you said, and now you are with one of the representatives of the Japanese JAXA agency.
Right. BepiColombo, a joint mission, of course, between ESA and JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency. And with us now, Dr. Hitoshi Kuninaka, Vice President at JAXA. Thank you for coming in. We want to talk, we've seen that BepiColombo with ESA and with Arianespace, part of a wider program of science projects. It's the same with you at JAXA. Can you tell us about some of those projects?
Yes, JAXA is now making the deep space fleet to investigate the solar system planet. And then so in 10 years, we will deliver our spacecraft from the from Jupiter to Mercury, and then so we will make the deep space fleet. In that sense, the BepiColombo is a very important role to investigate the Mercury region.
And it's also part of a very important international cooperation program on your side with the Europeans, which did not take place so much in the past. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. So BepiColombo is the JAXA's first major joint mission with ESA, and this task is very tough for us, but we have just accomplished, and we reached to the Memorial Day for launch campaign. And so this program fosters the good relationship and the mutual understanding between ESA and JAXA and Europe and Japan. So this framework will apply future space mission, CRISM, MMX, Destiny Plus, JUICE, and Athena and Spica, so on.
So you have a lot going for you in the future.
Yes.
With the international cooperation.
Yes, that's right.
And how are the relations with the Europeans? Good, I suppose?
Yes. ESA and the European people is a very important partner for Japan and JAXA.
Okay, tell us now, JAXA wants to reveal with this mission some of the physics, is that right, of Mercury. Can you give us an idea of what that's about?
Yes, that's right. So you may know only in a few probes investigated Mercury in the past. Yeah. And then so Mercury is still mysterious. And then so that the BepiColombo approach, that is a very important and remarkable thing. So combination of Bepi and Mio, simultaneous observation will reveal the mysterious Mercury in detail.
When do we start getting some information? 7 years.
7 years later.
Or 8 years, right?
8.
Okay, you're looking forward to that?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Dr. Kunionaka, many thanks. Terry's going to take us to Devil's Islands now. They're lying offshore here from the space base. They're famous for their prisons. You might recall the film Papillon, but there's more to it than that.
Mais oui!
Yes, indeed, Josh, indeed. Much more. You know that we have taken to the habit during these video transmission to help you discover, in a special way, from the bird's eye view, some emblematic places of this Guyana we love so much. Therefore, today we are heading off to the Île de Salut, these islands off Kourou. We will be flying over this volcanic archipelago in a few seconds to discover, indeed, 3 islands which form this archipelago, the Ile Royale in Saint-Joseph and the Devil's Island, all of which are volcanic in nature and are attached to the Cayenne municipality, CNES being the owner of these islands. The Île de Salut owe their name to the tragic Royal French expedition conducted in 1763, the Choiseul expedition, which resulted in the death of some 12,000 people in a year, and the survivors took refuge on these islands where the climate was more friendly and mosquito-free. This is why they renamed them Île du Salut. Then the jail was built there to receive the first political deportees. Alfred Dreyfus and Guillaume Cesnac were the most famous of the prisoners jailed there. After the closing of the jail in 1947, the Guyanese Space Center saw the light of day in 1965 and turned these islands into a strategic location because they are placed under the trajectory of the various launches installed on the Ile Royale as early as 1969, launches to the north. One of the follow-up facilities was the Kiné Theodolite, which is an optical instrument for graphic trajectory location, and now has been turned into a Kiné telescope with as its mission to observe in the visible world and infrared any significant events from the liftoff to the first stage separation. Since the 1980s, tourist has developed on the islands, and there has been a will to safeguard the heritage with the buildings like the Chapelle Royale or the House of Dreyfus. Ile Royale and St. Joseph's are open to visitors, which is not the case to this day for the Devil's Island, which is still closed to the public. So a favourite spot for tourists, these islands are reachable from the sea on a catamaran most of the time, and they offer a great variety of flora and fauna like iguanas, ara, monkeys, agoutis, and on the right season, I have a helicopter in my back, sorry, you can even discover, if you're lucky, the sea cows and the famous Guiana dolphins. They're very nice species. So that's all, Joshua, about the discovery of Guyana as seen from the skies. What I suggest we do now is we get back on the ground and join you at the Jupiter Control Center, still being enjoying these beautiful images from the drone. Therefore, we will join you at Jupiter, and we'll hear about the flight desk, if I'm not mistaken.
Flight desk is coming up, yeah. Meanwhile, the countdown is proceeding normally. If I can steal a look at my screen, 11 minutes and 28 seconds until liftoff BepiColombo on the Ariane 5. Now, remember, according to the professionals, countdown is the most intense part of the entire campaign for the mission, the campaign lasting roughly 6 weeks when the satellites first arrive here. We're going to, as Thierry said, present some of the key players in the mission tonight. We like to do that in the beginning of the broadcast. The people making the mission happen. This is the Ariane Space High Command, also called the Flight Desk, headed up by Stefan Israel, whom you saw. With him, Roland Lagier, the Chief Technical Officer. And these gentlemen will make the call should anything unexpected come up, either before or during the mission. You might see them on the phones to the teams here across the space base or back in Europe. Ariane 5 is ready for her mission. You might recall also that Ariane 5 is the reliable workhorse vehicle and the senior member of the Ariane 5 with Soyuz and Vega. Ariane designed for heavier satellites like tonight's. Coming up next, you're going to see the green status panels, a very important part of the mission, both especially before the mission. They are a real-time summary of everything that it takes to prepare, to launch, and to follow Ariane. You can see in the upper left of the screen there, it's behind us here in the hall on the far wall, the green status panels. We like to check them. There they are on the right from time to time before lifting off. And you see the color is green, which is just as it should be, so all is well. What they are is a go, no-go, red-green summary of everything that it takes for a mission. An Ariane or a Soyuz or a Vega, for that matter. Green means okay, red means the opposite. It's very simple. If you see a red in any of those, it means that we're going to stop the countdown. The space base covers a lot of area, and information from all these services, and you can see them there. They're safety and telemetry and the weather and the satellites and all that information coming in here to Jupiter from the different outposts, which is why we call Jupiter the nerve center and the real heart of the space base. Back inside of Jupiter, we're going to take a look at some other key players. We're going to look at the satellite mission directors, also called the DMS. These are people responsible for the chronology of their satellites. They decide if their satellite is ready for launch. They follow the campaign step by step and its preparation as managers. They meet with their teams on a daily basis, of course, and give the okay for each stage of the satellite's preparation. Most of them, I would say, are technically oriented, and every Arianespace customer will have one. You should be seeing Véronique Loisel of Arianespace coming up, and you'll be hearing from her later on in another film. And all these players we've been mentioned are an important part of the launch base. And, by the way, what is a launch base? Well, it's a place where the launcher and the payloads are prepared. They are launched and monitored before and during the mission. This one, the CSG, happens to be the world's only dedicated commercial space base, Arianespace operating the launcher family. Total mission time, as we mentioned, 26 minutes. Not exactly standard for an Arianespace launch. Usually it's a little longer, 45 minutes or an hour, depending on the mission. Two other people you're going to be seeing today from Arianespace, the mission director, Didier Said, working alongside the range operations manager, also called the DDO, tonight, Raymond Boyce. And it's his voice you're going to be hearing in just a moment when he's going to be calling out the 7-minute mark. That's an important milestone. We'll explain that in a moment. This person, the DDO, makes all the key announcement on the major milestones during the countdown and during the flight. And he will shortly call out the 7-minute mark, which is a key milestone. We're into the final moments of the final countdown as we wait for the DDO to call out the final
À tour de DDO, attention pour la séquence finale lanceur.
That's the DDO coming down to the 7-minute mark, and you'll hear him again.
Top, I0 moins 7 minutes.
All right, there we are. 7-minute mark brings us into what's known as the synchronized or the automatic sequence. It's a key milestone representing really the tip of the iceberg, the final moments of final countdown. A complex series of operations running right down to liftoff, making the launcher autonomous. Our stage is set. I'm going to go up to the broadcast booth. While I'm doing that, take a look at a film on the launcher campaign to see how Ariane is put together for the mission.
The VA-245 launch campaign started in the integration building, the BIL, on September 6. After the stages assembly and the fluidic and electronical functional checks, the launcher was transferred to the final assembly building, the BAF, 2 weeks ago. The nominal planning has been adapted to take into account all the specificities of this single launch.
BepiColombo is also a totally atypical launch campaign carried out over 6 months at the Guyana Space Center. First of all, 4 Antonov aircraft brought the spacecraft's elements and equipment to French Guiana. In addition to these Antonovs, about 10 more containers arrived by boat. During the spacecraft preparation phase at the S5C payload preparation complex, BepiColombo occupied the 2 clean rooms configured as one large room. The spacecraft teams proceeded step by step to unload and install the spacecraft modules in the clean room, to integrate the components onto these modules, to carry out electrical tests on different modules, to meticulously install thermal insulation, which is carefully tuned by hand, to check the different onboard propulsion systems of the modules. Solar panels were fitted onto each module of the spacecraft. We're all impressed by the solar panel deployment test carried out across the huge structure built in the room. The filling of BepiColombo's different modules was carried out in between all these operations according to well-established schedule. The MMO, the Japanese Space Agency's module, was integrated onto the European Space Agency's module, the MPO. Then the assembled modules were installed on the MTM, the transfer vehicle. After its preparation phase, BepiColombo was transferred to the final assembly building to be integrated onto the launcher. Once onto the launcher, the finishing touches were carried out, and the MOSIF, the sun shield, was integrated onto the spacecraft. The launch round rehearsal took place on October 15th, and the launch readiness review authorized the transfer of the launcher and its spacecraft to the launch zone on D1.
The final operations are now ongoing. Cryogenic fillings started 4 hours before the launch. Flight software has been uploaded into the onboard computers, and the synchronized sequence will be started around 7 minutes before liftoff.
Joshua Jempel back up in the broadcast booth with Johannes Benkoff of ESA, ESA's BepiColombo project scientist. Wonderful title. What's the job about?
Oh, hello and Ohio gozaimasu, Japan. Yeah, being project scientist of such a mission with 2 spacecraft and the collaboration between Europe and Japan is such a fascinating job, because you are dealing with all aspects of science, and you are the interface of the scientist. You deal with the engineers, you steer the science operation, so it's a great job.
Terrific. We'll hear more on that in a moment. But for now, we want to take the cameras up to the Launch Campaign Operations Center, where the teams are working, several teams up there,
under the direction of this fellow, Rafael Breda, who's the Launch Complex Operations Manager. Several teams up there, as we said. One is responsible for the ground operations, the other for readiness of the Ariane 5. The Launch Campaign Operations Manager heads up one group, and he coordinates with Mission Control for final authorization to launch, and when all the conditions are right, he then okays the automatic sequence at the 7-minute mark, which we just saw. In all, about 100 people up there. How long have you been on the project?
Oh, I've been on the project for 15 years now, and for more than 10 years I'm the project scientist. And as I said, I'm the voice of the scientist, and that's a very complex thing, because on BepiColombo we have 16 instruments on both spacecraft, and all in all there's more than 30 sensors. And so not only technology-wise, also from the science, it's a very complex mission.
Okay, we're going to hear more from you when you come back, because Johannes has never seen a launch. Excuse me. He's going to go out on the terrace with all the other VIPs and give us his reactions, hot reaction, when he comes back. So don't get lost. See you later. The split screen image on the screen on the left, liquid hydrogen, on the right, liquid oxygen. These are the propellant feeder arms in the middle of the launcher. We'll get another shot of that when we pull back. They are putting fuel into the upper stage tanks, and you'll see the arms, and you can see them there in the center of the screen, coming out of the gantry into the upper stage. You'll see the arms pull back at 7 seconds before ignition. What are the people doing? They're going out onto the terrace there, because we have 2 terraces on either side of Jupiter that give a wonderful view onto the launch pad, which is about 15 kilometers away from us here, and that's where Johannes is gone. The DDO is going to call out.
Stop à 0-1 minute.
And there we are. We're into the final 60 seconds as the crowd gathering on the terraces. Give us a chance to say hello to our friends at JAXA Tokyo, Airbus in Friedrichshafen, to our industrial partners, ESA, including ESAC, where we'll go momentarily, and CNES, and to all of you following the broadcast on the internet. We hope you are enjoying it. We're going to cut away now and let you listen to the DDO as he calls out the final countdown. Watch for the cryogenic arms to open and enjoy the liftoff.
À tour de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage 2EAP, décollage. Propulsion nominale, la trajectoire est nominale.
Roar of our engines, a lot of fire, and with BepiColombo on board, the DDO says all is well. The 2 boosters now providing 90, that's 90% of our thrust, propelling the launcher along her trajectory at an ever higher velocity. 780 tons at liftoff, that's the mass. And to get that sort of mass off the ground, you need a lot of push, and push we have. She's burning 5 tons of fuel every second. 2.5 tons being burned every second in each booster, plus the core stage burning another 300 kilos of fuel every second. Ariane 5 putting on quite a show. I can't wait for Johannes to come back and tell us his reactions. The sky is clear. You should be able to see separation of the boosters, maybe even separation of the fairing. We'll find out momentarily. Ariane 5 now following the program and the onboard computer, which gives all the orders, including stage separation. We'll soon see that in just about 30 seconds from now. We are in the first of 4 flight phases. The first 3 are powered, and we'll describe each in turn so you can follow. Right now, the first flight phase, the single first stage engine, and the two boosters are burning. The boosters will each consume their 240 tons in just over 2 minutes, and in just about 10 seconds. They will be the first to be extinguished, and you'll hear that from the DDO, but you'll see that on the screen. You'll see the flame out there.
Pilotage calme, trajectoire nominale.
There it is. You see the main point of light in the middle. When we come back to that, and the 2 points of light on either side are the boosters. That's what it looks like up there. There's another booster on the port side, of course, out of camera range. But you see the main point of light looks like the moon in the middle, and on the side the 2 boosters flaming out, and they will fall into the Atlantic. French Guiana, in part, chosen as a base for its opening on the ocean, launches posing no threat to the local population, of course. We're waiting for Johannes to come back. Before he comes back, our next milestone, separation of the fairing. That's next up as we continue to follow Ariane with looks like a ground camera or the naked eye.
Séparation de la
the launcher making sure the DDO has called out separation of the fairing. And this is what that looks like. There's another half on the starboard side, which is falling into the Atlantic as well. We can separate the fairing now. Why? Because we're out of the dense layers of the atmosphere, of course. Over 100 meters altitude. And you can see on the bottom of your screen on the left, our altitude 140 kilometers. And on the right, our speed, 2.4 kilometers per second. We can also discard any dead weight. The fairing, excuse me, weighs 2.5 tons. So it's a good idea to get rid of it now that we can. The guests coming in after being treated to a wonderful sound and light show. On the left there is the satellite, the white boxes. Below that is the composite. One reason Kourou was chosen as the launch site was its nearby hills, where we could install radar and telemetry facilities. And that's where we're going now, this office. Another place that is very active tonight, the CVI, or the Quick Look Telemetry Display Control Center. Now, these teams have all the means for receiving, processing, storing, and analyzing all the data coming in from the ground stations. We'll have more on them along Ariane's flight path. The CVI is stationed atop a hill, and you just saw, not far from Jupiter. And right now, these teams are following and analyzing all the key flight data coming in and reporting the flight status of the launcher back to the teams here in Mission Control. It's all part of the great information flow from points across the base to Mission Control, Jupiter, the Nerve Center. And Johannes has returned, and you are smiling. Tell us, how was it out there?
Oh, it was fantastic. I've never seen that before, and it was great.
Yeah. What impressed you the most? Was it the sound? Was it the light? Something else?
Oh, it was the brightness of the rocket when it went to the sky, and you could not see the rocket. It was like a big fireball going up to the sky, and it was really amazing.
Super. Did you see the separation of the boosters?
Yes, you could see it.
Great. Okay, so if that doesn't make you want to come down here and watch a launch, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what will. Next up, we want to find out...
Il reste 3 minutes de propulsion de l'EPC.
I imagine, like most missions, you had some problems. We're going to have to go to a film, but give us a first taste, and we'll continue after the film. Any problem that you solved that you remember?
Oh, BepiColombo was a bumpy ride from the beginning. We had issues with the solar panels, which were not standing the combination of heat and solar radiation. And for that reason, we had to make them much bigger and tilt them by more than 80 degrees.
All right, we'll get the details on that in a moment. First, a film on the other milestone scientific missions launched by Ariane. You might remember some of those flights. Maybe you were even here in Jupiter for the launch, like Johannes was. We were just picked up by our first downrange tracking station. We promised some information on those. It's located in Natal, over the border in our neighbor Brazil, run by the Brazilians.